Pilot returns to Iceland Super DC-3 crash 50 years later. U.S. naval pilot Greg Fletcher was 26 years old, as shown in the picture, when a Super DC-3 he was co-piloting crashed on a beach in southern Iceland on the 21st of November, 1973. In September 2025, Greg is returning to the site of the accident for the first time, to visit the wreckage which has become a major tourist attraction. In this video we will tell the story of the crash, in part using Greg's own words. Greg inherited his passion for flying from his father, a career naval aviator who served during World War II. My earliest memories are from when I was about 5 years old, sitting in the cockpit of a Grumman Hellcat fighter plane, similar to the Grumman Wildcat shown here, at the Glenview Naval Air Station, Chicago, Illinois, USA, now the Glen, Open Space and Mixed Use District. I basically grew up in an aviation-infused environment. Former Glenview Naval Air Station, Chicago, Illinois, now the Glen, Open Space and Mixed Use District. Only the control tower with its hangar remain, a sad ending for an historic airport started by famous aviation pioneer Glenn Curtiss in 1929. From the age of consciousness, I think I formed a plan. I wanted to become a pilot, so I went to the University of Colorado on a naval scholarship, and then went directly to flight training at Naval Air Station Pensacola and got my wings. Greg was probably trained on North American Trojans, similar to the North American Texans shown here, before going on to jet aircraft. Present-day KNPA Naval Air Station Pensacola, Florida, USA, freeware. At the Naval Air Station Pensacola, Greg went on to be trained as a jet fighter pilot, probably in Grumman Cougars, as shown here. Now we go to the crash flight itself. The aircraft involved was a Douglas Super DC-3, an upgraded version of the iconic Douglas DC-3, featuring increased engine power, more streamlined panels, a lengthened fuselage, new outer wings with squared-off tips, a larger tail, and landing gear doors, all amounting to much improved performance. Introduced in 1949, it was used by the military, but saw limited commercial success as it was seen as a rehash of an older aircraft rather than a new modern design. No Super DC-3 in Microsoft Flight Simulator, so we'll take the usual DC-3. Map of southern Iceland. Greg was a jet pilot and had little experience flying the Super DC-3. This cargo flight, on the 21st of November, 1973, was for him to accrue flight hours. The plan was for the aircraft commander, XO, to fly the leg out from BIKF Naval Air Station Keflavik, to drop supplies off at Bergen-Hofen-Hornafjorda Airport for delivery by road to the nearby remote Stocksnes radar station. Greg was to fly the return leg, BIHN back to BIKF, with the XO monitoring engines and radio. Departing BIKF Naval Air Station Keflavik, freeware. XO flying, Greg monitoring. I was in training in this airplane. This was a whole different kettle of fish for me. Approaching Bergen-Hofen-Hornafjorda Airport, freeware. They were dropping off supplies at BIHN for delivery by road to the nearby remote Stocksnes radar station located at the right-hand side end of the mountains. After offloading the supplies for the radar station, they picked up passengers for the return to BIKF Naval Air Station Keflavik. There were 7 total on board, including an aircraft engine mechanic. Departing BIHN Hofen Hornefjorda Airport, Greg flying the return leg back to BIKF with the EXO monitoring engines and radio. The weather reports were mostly favourable. There had been some moderate icing forecast, but I would say 45 minutes after we departed, we encountered very severe icing. The aircraft's anti-icing systems, carburetor heat and alcohol, weren't enough. This icing was extreme. It was like someone standing in front of the aircraft, shooting ice with a fire hose. Within seconds, both engines quit. We went from doing power transport to an overweight glider. As the EXO and other crew on board struggled to get the engines to restart, Greg worked to keep the aircraft steady and navigate a safe landing. I realized we were over a 5,000-foot glacier, and we were at 10,000 feet, coming down at 800 feet per minute. I suggested to the EXO that we turn south and ditch. Our chances were better in the North Atlantic than colliding with the glacier in the clouds. At 2,500 feet, the cloud finally broke. I said, "EXO, I think I see a shoreline." We were very, very lucky. We were right over a beach that had a broad expanse of sand. Moments later, the crippled transport slammed into the black sands of Solheimersander Beach. They landed without lowering the landing gear, due to concerns that it might catch on the sand and cause the aircraft to flip over. I think the ground speed at touchdown couldn't have been more than 50 miles per hour. Fortunately, all aboard survived. They had radioed for help as they descended. Soon, Marine helicopters arrived to rescue them and guard the aircraft. Once the investigation was complete, the Navy salvaged the engines, radios, and seats, but left the fuselage behind, where it is today. The airframe itself was in such a remote area that it would have been very, very difficult for them to remove it. Greg returns to Solheimersander Beach, accompanied by his wife, later this month. I'm eager to use the opportunity to correct the tales out there about how the airplane got on the beach. The one that irritates me is that we ran out of gas or switched to the wrong tank. The aircraft accident report was very clear that the cause of the engine failures was sudden severe ice accumulation in the carburetors, overwhelming the aircraft's de-icing systems. If you're not in aviation, you don't understand how powerful the atmosphere can be. Over the decades, the broken frame has attracted international attention and featured in films and videos. It has become one of Iceland's most photographed landmarks. Each day, dozens of visitors trek the 3.5 kilometers from the nearest road to take pictures of the skeletal fuselage resting on black sand. After completing his military service, Greg had a 40-year-long career as an attorney in Memphis, Tennessee. Even so, I love flying, and I continued to fly. Quite frankly, that airplane saved my life. It's a great airplane, but I don't know exactly what I'll feel when I return. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked. Now finish off by enjoying some real footage of perhaps the last remaining airworthy Super DC-3 landing at Anchorage, Alaska. Compared to the normal DC-3, increased engine power, more streamlined panels, lengthened fuselage, new outer wings with squared-off tips, larger tail, and landing gear doors, all adding much improved performance, but still beaten at the time by other newer, more modern airliners.